One summer, when everybody's going up to the glaciers and skiing with coaches and training and all that, I decided to go to Asia for 4 months to work on my self-esteem. And I didn't even know where Asia was. I just bought a ticket through a travel agent because that's what we did back then. And I had 2 rules for this trip. I realized my self-esteem was based on the fact that I was a good skier and that I was pretty. And so for those 4 months, my rule was I was going to make myself as ugly as possible.
All right, you're listening to Hawke Talk. I'm here today with Kristen Ulmer. How are you?
I'm good.
Thanks for coming
Mexico, in
on.
winter.
Yeah, perfect. No complaints there. So I got to imagine, the day you're born, you probably popped out of the womb, put on some skis, had no fear, jumped out the window, just went for it, right? That's how it all started right from the beginning?
No, I was a very shy kid, very sensitive, didn't have hardly any friends until I was about 12 years old, just alone on the playground and blind as a bat.
Oh, got it. And from the beginning, you had bad vision from birth?
Yeah, I came out of the womb with legally blind.
I'm curious, how do you find that out with a young kid? As someone that has a 2-year-old who seems to have decent vision, but at what point did your parents figure out that you weren't able to see things?
My parents were free range parents, so they didn't notice anything. Even when I was a partier, when I was in junior high school, I would stay out all night. They'd never noticed. And I didn't have to speak out the window.
They believed in you just having your freedom?
Yeah, they did. And how it was figured out is I was in 2nd grade and my last name begins with a U, and I would sit in the front row because I couldn't see the board otherwise. And then they alphabetized the room and I wound up in the back. And so I decided to hide behind a chalkboard because I couldn't see anything. But of course, my legs were sticking out. So the teacher noticed and she figured it out. So I didn't even know until I was 2 years old. And it explains a lot of my shyness. I couldn't see anything.
Yeah, it's interesting, how, I guess, as you said, you had free range parents, but I've had that thought of because my wife wears glasses and I'm like, how do I know if our daughter's going to need them? I don't know. How do you figure that out? That was just curious, but tangent. So free range parents. And I'm curious because, we'll fast forward in a little bit about fear, but I've always been curious on the parenting side. If you're free range, does that help with you? It sounds like it's helped you become very secure, or does it make you more insecure because you don't have that sheltering from your parents? Where did that kind of go with you as an early age?
Well, it could go either way with people, but for me, it wound up working in my favor. And also what worked in my favor is my dad was very, very difficult, and I had a lot of anger. And I had a lot of anger specifically towards men. Mm-hmm. And you would have never have thought, oh, that girl, she's angry at men. No, it just showed up as competitiveness and oh yeah, watch this. And so I was very much judging my skiing compared to the men. And if people actually said, oh, you're the best woman skier I've ever seen, I'd be like, whatever, that doesn't mean anything to me. I want to be the best, period. And a lot of that came from that neglect as a child and also need for love and approval and attention and all that.
Got it. And you said, so your dad was sort of free range, but difficult. How did that manifest as a kid?
I don't know that he was free range. He was just really checked out and just a very, very, very difficult person. And I couldn't have any boundaries or there's no consideration for me as a person. And it just made me angry. But I didn't come across as an angry person. Anger, if you harness it, just shows up as passion. And I came across as a very passionate person. And I definitely didn't seem like I had a chip on my shoulder about men. I think nobody that has ever met me would ever say that about me. I love men, right? Yeah. To a fault. And so, but I just, my anger showed up as passion and fire. And I also had the right relationship with fear because I decided at age, I wouldn't say now it's the right relationship, but I remember consciously deciding at age 6, these people are nuts. I'm going to have to just raise myself. And that made me very independent. And it made me block out my fear, which actually was helpful, but also caused problems for me later in life.
And where did you grow up, by the way? Where are you from?
Henniker, New Hampshire, a very small town.
And was there a local ski resort? How did skiing fall into the picture?
There was a little ski resort called Pat's Peak, and I was offered free ski lessons and equipment and getting out of school early on Wednesdays. And so, but the thing that's really interesting is aside from a couple lessons in second grade, third grade, I never had any training
Uh-huh.
at all in skiing. And I became world class at two different areas of the sport. I was on the US ski team for moguls, having never had any coaching. I made it on the team competing against women who had been trained their whole life in the best ski school academies, best training summer academies, that money can buy. And then the big mountain extreme skiing. So I'm definitely the poster child for it's all mental.
And so on that note, I mean, first off, how did you end up with taking off school and free equipment and free lessons? Was that just something your school offered, or where did that come from?
My dad was a college professor, and so I got a free pass, and I think there were some other perks. I don't really know how it worked. All I know is that I just never remembered having to pay for skiing when I was a kid.
And as you said, it's mental, but training wise, did you fall in love with it right away? Were you like, oh, this is what I'm meant to do, I love this thing? Or was it like, oh, this is fun, I get to take off school and go a couple times a week? Like what was your relationship early on with it?
I was just in it for the social aspect, like hanging out with my girlfriends. And then right around age 15, I became obsessed with skiing. And I actually would skip school to go skiing every day during lunch. And I eventually got busted for it. And they gave me a whole bunch of detentions and, but I had a straight A's in school. And so they let me graduate, even though when I graduated, I think I had like 60 detentions that I hadn't served.
And what do you think kicked that in at 15? Like why you had this hobby that you enjoyed, and then 15, you get that passionate about it. Where did that come from?
I realized that I was really good at it, and it gave me some self-esteem, which when you're a teenager, just is in short supply. So I just girl, and I just realized I had some talent for it, and I became obsessed. And I skied in jeans until I was 20, years old. And then I was a pro skier on the US ski team by 23 and considered the best in the world at big mountain extreme skiing by 23. And so in my life, I only bought one pair of used ski pants for $40, and that's it. And I don't think I've ever paid for a pair of skis. I usually would just get them out of a garbage dumpster, and then all of a sudden I was sponsored.
And were your parents supportive at that point? Like, did they take you to the ski meetups, or did they push you at all or have a part of it? Or were they literally like, oh, you're going to do that? Cool, have fun.
No, I remember hitchhiking to the ski area more than once. And I had some girlfriends that had the equivalent of a soccer mom back then, but it was a ski mom and a gymnastics mom. And the gymnastics really helped me with the skiing. And she just drove us everywhere. My parents never.
And so you get out of high school. Did you go to college, or did you just start skiing from then on? Or were you, what happened post high school?
I went to college, but I realized that I wanted to go to college where there's skiing. So I spent the first semester in college, and I graduated from high school a year done with college. I had that option. It's another story. But so I went to England for my first semester, and then took the second semester off and skied in Europe that winter. And I was 17 when I went there and 18 when I left. And then I moved to Utah to go to college because I wanted to ski. And I was going to be an international politics major, but I wound up graduating from college after 17 years in college, from age 14 to 31.
Yeah.
And I never missed a year without taking at least one class, but it got to the point where I only went to school when I was injured.
But you took consecutively every year, you took some class.
Yes.
That's awesome. Sorry that you were injured, and so at what point did you, like you said, you realized you were good, you started getting confidence at 15. When did you really start competing?
Well, keep in mind, the big mountain extreme skiing is not competing. That's filming, or doing photographs. But I started competing when I was 19 or 20. Well, probably 20, because I had just bought that pair of ski pants, and I was competing in moguls just because I was hanging out with friends that were competing in moguls, and I just wanted to go on the fun ski trips they were going on. And I never had a goal to get on the US ski team for moguls. And then I got really good suddenly one summer. You can ask me about that. It's an interesting story.
Yeah.
And then I all of a sudden found myself getting invited to nationals. And when you go to nationals, it's because you've gotten enough points during the year that you get invited. And then once you go to nationals, if you ski better than somebody that's already on the US ski team, you get their spot. So, and I went from last place one year to the next year, going all the way to being on the US ski team in one year. It was crazy.
And I've got to ask, as you said, giving me permission to ask, you got really good at moguls one summer, which is usually not a line you expect to hear. So how did you get good at skiing one summer?
When I say I was in last place, I mean I was in last place at these mogul competitions. And then one summer when everybody's going up to the glaciers and skiing with coaches and training and all that, I decided to go to Asia for 4 months to work on my self-esteem. And I didn't even know where Asia was. I just bought a ticket through a travel agent because that's what we did back then. And I had 2 rules for this trip. I realized my self-esteem was based on the fact that I was a good skier and that I was pretty. And so for those 4 months, my rule was I was going to make myself as ugly as possible, got rid of my contact lenses, wore glasses, wore frumpy clothes, and never bathed. And then I also had the rule of I wasn't allowed to talk about skiing, which means that I didn't think about skiing. So I spent 4 months just taking a lot of risks. Like I volunteered for Mother Teresa's House for the Destitute and Dying in Calcutta, India. I almost lost my leg to gangrene.
Wow.
I wound up getting robbed in the Philippines and had to leave the country at gunpoint. I got drugged. Like I had all these crazy experiences that were.
How old were you again?
I was 22 and I turned 23 while I was there. And so I was just doing fear. I went to Bangladesh just to see, poverty. So I was just all alone, and I was just doing one thing after another that involved a tremendous amount of fear, and not talking about skiing and not relying on my looks or anything, just having this crazy adventure with a lot of fear involved. And I came home and nobody wanted to hear about the trip. It was just my private thing because it was wild and absolutely life-changing. And the first Mogul competition that year, I won it. And then I kept winning it and kept winning it. And by the end of the year, I was on the US ski team. And I didn't think or talk about skiing all summer, and everybody else was training moguls all summer. And so I just worked on my self-esteem by taking this trip.
And that's what did it. Is that where you start? Did you already have an inkling that it was a mental game and you needed to do that for your skiing? Or was that just, I want to go do this?
I didn't do it because I was thinking that I wanted to be a better skier. I was just doing it. And like I said, I didn't have the goal to get on the US ski team. I was just living my life and kind of going with my inclinations. And I realize now too, that it was kind of the start of my addiction to fear. Mm-hmm. And that was really what was going on. I wanted like the crazier, wilder experiences over in Asia is what I wanted to do.
And so what did that lead to? I mean, as you said, it led to the mogul piece, but like, did that open up the big mountain skiing more? Or like, what did it have a whole, like when you say you got addicted to fear, were there other things you did? Did you travel to another country and just try to go and see what would happen and put yourself into danger? Like, how did that manifest?
Well, I'm a fear and anxiety specialist right now for a living. And I realize now that what confidence is and where confidence comes from is because fear's in our lives all day, every day, and especially if we're doing big things with our lives, there's going to be even more fear. If you have the confidence to know that you can handle the fear and handle it well, then you have confidence. And confidence is really determined by our ability to handle fear and knowing that we got that. And most people don't know how to handle fear. And so it was really an education on how to handle fear. And then I came home, and then when I was in the gate, the fear of doing something crazy in Asia while you're traveling, and the fear of being in the gate and failure and all that, and getting hurt, and it's all the same. Fear's just fear. It's
yep.
And I now knew how to handle it.
Got it. And do you think that trip to Asia did that? That were you already able to handle fear, or was that just a highlight of how good you are at handling fear?
Well, I have a paradox going on, kind of like everybody has a paradox. I know how to handle fear really well, but I also do what everybody does, which is have a compromised relationship with fear. My particular brand of resistance to it was I ignored it. And so the part of me that handled fear properly is I have intimacy with it. Like, I'm like, hell yeah to fear. Like, give me more. I want more fear. I eat it like manna. Like, I became like a heroin addict, and had intimacy with fear is the word. I was willing to feel it. And then I had intimacy with it, and it made me feel alive. It never made me feel, if you have intimacy with fear, you never feel scared or afraid. You just feel alive and very present and focused. Mm-hmm. But I wasn't like that all the time. I also had another part of me that resisted it to an extreme, which I learned when I was 6 years old, when I decided I was just going to block it out and be tough and macho and manly, I guess, so that I didn't have to feel fear. And so when I did it right, the intimacy, which not many people know how to do or do in general, just even having a drop of that just changes everything for people. That's one way to get to fearlessness, is intimacy with fear. The other way to get to fearlessness is the radical denial of fear, which is the complete opposite. And I did that also. And it is during those times that I floundered.
Got it. And okay. And so you come back from Asia, get on the US ski team. Tell me more about the big mountain stuff you're doing, the backcountry side of things. Like, how'd you get into that? How did that, as you said, it's not necessarily a competitive landscape. You're not competing with other people. You're filming movies, et cetera. Like, did you just run into some people that wanted to film some movies and you were really good? Or like, how does that happen?
Well, the only reason why I believe in reincarnation is because clearly I was a cat in another lifetime. Like I was really, really good in the air and could land jumps long before I actually knew how to take a turn. And I know that's really rare, especially rare for a woman. But like the mogul skiing, I was just trying to get to the next air because that's where I felt at home. And for those who don't know mogul skiing, it's a combination of turns and air. And so the big mountain extreme skiing, after I got back from Asia, I was also auditioned for a movie. And I'd never jumped off a cliff before, but I was really good in the air from the moguls. And so they're filming all these guys. And this is during a time when we were still on skinny skis. Very few people were jumping off cliffs. The ones who were jumping off cliffs were getting famous, like Scott Schmidt or Glenn Plake. There were no women jumping off cliffs. And I'm just watching these guys. I realized that if I wanted to get in this movie, I had to jump off one of these cliffs. And so that's what I did. And my first cliff was about a 20-foot cliff, which is a big cliff if it's your first one. And I was used to kicker air from moguls. And I jumped off this cliff, did a back scratcher, which I'd also never done before. And that's what I saw the guys doing. Landed it, skied away.
A back scratcher?
It's where you arch your back and you put the tails of your skis in between your shoulder blades. And then you bring it back forward. So I did 3 of those that day. I was at Squaw Valley in front of a bunch of kind of hotshot skiers. And no girls were doing anything like that anywhere in the world, much less landing the airs. And so by the end of the day in Squaw Valley, everybody had heard about me in town and knew my name. And by the end of the week, the entire ski industry had heard about me. And by the end of the month, I was fully sponsored and being called the best in the world at big mountain extreme skiing.
Wow. So it ramped quick.
And it happened simultaneously with the mogul skiing. It all just came together after that trip to Asia where I worked on my self-esteem and had a love affair with fear.
And I was going to say, launching off that cliff, as you said, the first one being 20 feet, my level of skiing, I've done like one 25-footer once, and I capped out. And yes, I have a picture of it. And I'm like, that's where I peaked. Perfect. And I can attest to the fact you have enough time to think about it on the way down. Like it's enough height.
It's a long way down.
Yeah. And doing that over and over again for your first time, like it seems like that's exactly where it came from, is you had overcome this fear. You were able to just go, this is what I want to do. This is how I'm going to do it, and have this, good relationship with it. I understand it's scary, but I'm going to lean into it. Does that sound right? Is that where it came from?
Well, the language choice that you just used is very common language. I didn't overcome fear at all. It's unfortunate language that we use that in terms of fear. Nobody's overcoming fear. You either are in resistance to it or you're embracing it and having intimacy with it. And so it never even occurred to me to be afraid that day. So what actually happened that day was I was having a love affair with fear. I was willing to feel it, for starters. And then I had intimacy with the fear, and the fear is what kept me safe and kept me, super present and bringing my A game so that I landed those jumps and did them with style.
Got it. Love it. And so again, did you obviously you didn't expect it, but was there was there a dream in your head of like, I could be a pro skier and I'm going to get sponsored? Like, was this something that did you achieve something here that you were planning on? Or did it just happen because you were just walking your path?
I didn't have a goal to be a professional skier. I didn't have a goal, like I said, to be on the US ski team. It just all happened for me really quickly, probably because all the stars aligned. I had the right opportunity as a child. I had the right childhood demons and wounds. I had the right relationship with fear where I like craved it like a Labrador craves a ball, right? I had the right body type. I had the right personality, and the opportunity, of course.
No, and I think that's a good way to look at it. And so, but when it happened, was there a holy shit moment of like, I can't believe this is happening? Like in terms of a gratitude moment of like, this just happened, I'm sponsored, like, I can't believe it? Or was it like, oh, next thing, like, I guess this is what I'm doing? Like a lot of times when people achieve that, it's something they've dreamed of. With you, it's something that, you accomplished the same way, but it wasn't something you spent your entire life, dreaming about. So when it happened, I'm curious of the feelings that came with that.
I remember the first time I was on a plane where somebody was paying for me to go skiing and I was
Yep.
getting paid to go, and I had all sort of free equipment and all the sponsored logos all over me, and my bag, my luggage was sponsored and all that. It was quite a moment, and I don't think it ever lost its like yumminess. I felt like Snoopy, like, oh, here's the world famous extreme skier getting on the plane, about to go heli skiing again. And I mean, I've spent over 2 years of my life heli skiing, like, and it
Meaning counting days.
never got less like yummy and romantic for
So
me.
meaning like you've done more than 720 days of heli skiing or 730.
Not days, but I've at least sat in the lodge at a heli lodge
Yeah.
waiting for the weather to clear for
Yeah.
700.
Fair enough. Yeah. Love that. And so once you start, how long did that last in terms of the professional side of skiing? And like, how long were you able to ride that wave as a career, as something that you could do to be paid to go do big mountain? And or actually step back, how long were you on the US team?
I was on the US ski team for half a season. And the reason why is I didn't have rich parents. And back then you had to be an amateur athlete and you needed rich parents. And frankly, once I got on World Cup and was in the gate and there was cameras everywhere, it was overwhelming. And I kind of reverted back to childhood insecurities and and didn't know how to handle the fear and lost that confidence. And I really did not thrive on the US ski team. But meanwhile, I was being asked to go heli skiing and film a movie, and they were going to pay me to go, and they would pay me to use their equipment and all of that. Whereas the US ski team, I would have had to have come up with 30 grand in the early 90s that I didn't have just to even be on the team because I wasn't winning yet. And for me, I had to make a decision because I couldn't go and get paid to ski and stay on the US ski team at the same. So it was a super easy decision though. But big mountain extreme skiing was not a established genre. It was just starting to be established, like with Glenn Plake, Scott Schmidt, these names maybe you've heard. And they were kind of paving the way, and the ski industry was really hungry for somebody like me because I was so much better than the other girls. Like I wasn't just the best, like there was just the chasm of ability between where I was and where my competition was, certainly when I started, was so huge that the opportunities and sponsors were just like, it was a lot. And it was such an obvious choice to do that instead.
And so how long did that last, so to speak? How long, or is it still going in terms of, it sounds like you were 23 when it really hit, you said, right?
I also blew out my knee, and the year that I was on the US ski team, I was training aerials on a trampoline. Mm-hmm. And you have a 1-year injury clause. The next year was an Olympic year. I would have loved to have gone to the Olympics, but I decided to ride my bicycle across India that fall before the Olympics, thinking that would be a good idea to rehab my knee before, the Olympic year. And I spent 2 months. I did this by myself, that's what fear addicts do. They do things like ride their mountain bike across India by themselves. Yep. My knee swelled up like a grapefruit at the end of that trip, and my surgery failed. And so my body had eaten the new ACL. It turned it to the consistency of wet toilet paper, basically. Jeez. And so there's no way you can ski moguls with a knee like that. And so that was also a contributing factor. But I skied that next season without an ACL and jumped off cliffs all season, which is, I mean, you can't even tell you what I had to do mentally to do that. And I wound up having 4 ACL reconstructions in 3 years because the next surgery failed, and then I blew my other knee out. And so and this is great information for all people that blow their knees out. Like my 4 ACL reconstructions and my 2 blown out knees happened at the start of my ski career. And I did the majority of my skiing as a professional skier after those surgeries. And I went on to be considered the best woman big mountain extreme skier in the world for 12 years in a row.
So, okay. So you had all these injuries and missed the Olympics. And is this year like what, 25, 26, it sounds like?
Well, I didn't have a lot of injuries. I only had the one injury, but right. I had bunk surgery, and the surgeon really.
By the way, sadly, my mom had the exact same thing. Didn't do it the same way, but she was skiing and on a green and just fought her ski and popped her ACL, had, I think, 4 or 5 surgeries to fix it.
Yeah.
So it can be rough, or it can be really simple for the lucky people.
Well, what makes it rough is when people try to get out there too soon, or they
Yeah.
do their rehab aggressively. I would say of my extreme athlete peers, 90% of us mess up our surgeries by trying to do too much too soon. And I don't mean just getting out there, but we're like, if the physical therapist says do 3 reps of 15, we do 6 reps of 30, and it require, next thing you know, we need to have another surgery. So that's hot tip for anybody
Yeah.
listening.
You need to let it heal as much as you need to rehab.
Let it heal. Less
Yeah.
is more.
Yep. Yeah. No, that's important because I think we also come from, especially when you're a high achiever, exactly that. Like, oh, I can do more. Like this is for basic people. I'm more aggressive than that. I'm better than that. I'm going to go more than that. Sometimes the key is rest, not aggressiveness. I've been through a few other surgeries like that. So, and how old were you when this all happened? When you had the ACL in the Olympics?
That was between the ages of, I believe, 23 and 20.
Oh, so it was right when you got on the team. It was that 1 year.
Yeah, and we're making a big deal out of my US ski team stint. Like it was
No,
such a blip, but
Yeah.
it was definitely the start of my knee issues. And like I said, I had 4 ACL reconstructions in 3 years, and I never missed a ski season. Now,
and that's when you went to
about
college
that.
too, as you said. That was when you were going to school as well.
No, I would go to school
Yeah.
when after the surgery, but I wasn't going to school during the ski season. But all 4 of those surgeries, my first turn back was either photographed, filmed, or judged.
So no practice run, just go.
Yep.
Got it. And so, as you said, that was just a start. And so it sounds like after a few years, you healed up, you were good. And then how much of your time was spent running around, doing these filmings or competitions, et cetera, for Big Mountain? Was it 4 months a year? Was it like, how long was the season for you?
There was about a 10-year span of time where I don't think I skied a single day where I wasn't either being, like I said, filmed, photographed, or judged, or doing a promotion for one of my sponsors. And so, I mean, if I skied 120 days, I had 120 days of work.
And that's for a decade. So what about the other 240?
No, more than that.
Oh, got it.
Yeah.
And so the other 245 days a year, were you training? What were you doing on those days?
I probably skied more than 120 days, but I was riding my bike, doing more kind of dangerous adventure travel. I visited, 70 countries and hitchhiked in 30 of them and did a lot of crazy things. And I got into rock climbing and ice climbing and paragliding, kiteboarding eventually, but became obsessed with climbing basically. And I used that to transition into more and more ski mountaineering. So what I was known during my big mountain career was big jumps. And I was definitely a jumper. I loved doing up to 70-foot cliffs on skinny skis still. I mean, it was, and then,
by the way, if you're going off a 70-foot cliff, do you just look at the angle of the landing and go, I should be good? Like how much prep work goes into launching off a 70-foot drop? I only did one of those, and every jump is different. Usually there's a lot of prep work, like you scope it out either from the helicopter or you, like that particular day, I had some friends at the bottom with a radio, and they told me when to point it, and they actually were kind of pranksters, and I only really wanted to do about 50 feet. The cliff itself was maybe 30 feet, but they told me to point it because it was unseeable. You couldn't look over the edge because it was powder, steep slope going into it. And we scoped it out in the snowcat before we went up. But I didn't know where I was on the mountain. And so I was just relying on my friends. And they said, okay, point it from here. And I probably pointed it 50 feet on a 50-degree slope higher than I should have because they were being pranksters. And so I get in the air. I'm like, what? And landed in powder, and but my boot broke on landing. Oh, so you did hit hard.
Yeah, the whole tongue of my boot broke in half. That's how violent the impact was.
Did you?
But I skied away. I was
gonna say you skied it. You
skied out of it? Away, but my boot was folded, and my tongue was folded in half, and I'm totally in the back seat with one leg trying to ski away with style. And I'm like, what is going on with my boot?
Wow. And going back to the fear thing, like after that, were you like, were you angry at them for messing with you? Were you like, that was really dumb, or that was nuts, or was like, that was fun? Oh, that was, the days where there's more fear than normal are the days that you remember. And I'm saying that not just for me as a big mountain extreme skier. We don't call them extreme skiers anymore, but it's the same with anything. It's for anybody, it's the days where there's a lot of fear involved that you remember the most. And Stephen Kotler, who's
probably the expert on flow states in the world that's alive today.
Mhm.
He says, when there's fear involved, flow comes for free. He said this to me. And I said, no, no,
Yeah.
no. There's one caveat. When there's fear involved and you have intimacy with it, flow comes from. And so it's those moments that where there's like this tremendous rush, and people call people like me adrenaline addicts or sensation seekers or whatever, but really I'm a fear seeker. And if I have the intimacy with the fear, then it's an incredible experience. But if I had resistance to the fear, then I'd be angry at them and traumatized and maybe even have PTSD. But no, I was like all in on fear.
Love it. And so, and going from that, as you said, you're launching off these things. And again, I was curious about the prep work. At what point did it start to feel like you had run your course with Big Mountain and with this, part of your career, your life, et cetera? I mean, I know you still ski, don't get me wrong, but like going and filming 120 days a year, that kind of thing. Like it sounds like you did that for well over a decade. At what point is it like, all right, like this has been fun, I'm not going to keep doing this? Like what brought that to a head?
Well, I would probably film or do photo shoots about 40 days a year, and the rest would be all appearances. But I mean, 12 years is a really long time, and it was so dangerous. And, I had over 60 near-death experiences, 60, it's a lot. And they were, each of them are epic survival stories, how much time do you have? And I also saw a lot of people get crippled for life, dozens. I watched 2 people die. I have 4 ex-boyfriends that have died doing these sports. And, there's in each one of these experiences just romanticized what I was doing more. It didn't deter me. It just made what I was doing more romantic. But it got to the point where it just started to feel really dumb. And then I had this one near-death experience in Chamonix, France, where we were stuck on a 70-degree slope, 4 of us, head to toe, on a wall of ice, skis off, skis at our chest, and with a series of avalanches running down our backs, at 100 and whatever miles an hour for 3 hours straight, about an avalanche every 5 or 10 minutes. And they brought in a helicopter to retrieve our dead bodies, and were surprised to find that we were still alive and had to get rescued one by one from a static line off a helicopter. It was a life-changing moment for me because I felt like the universe, I had 4 near-death experiences in about 3 months. And that was number 3. And the next day I had to get back on the horse. I went skiing, something where you fall, you die. And I fell. And you have like half a second to get your act together and get back on your feet before you're just gone. And I did a backward roll on a 50-degree slope of ice and got back on my feet. And so this was the very next day. And I'm like, okay, the universe is very clearly communicating with me that it's time to stop or I'm going to die. And they're doing it in the gentlest of ways because it's not resulting in any injuries for me. And I thought, well, I better listen. And I also realized that I just wanted to do something more with my life. The whole time I was a professional skier, I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, this doesn't suit who I am. Like, this is such a dumb, lifestyle. I'm hanging out with all these partying bro bras. I didn't party. I don't speak bro. And I just felt like it was time for me to have a more intelligent, there's a lot of intelligence in the physical intelligence and the spiritual intelligence and emotional intelligence that goes into performing at a high level as an athlete, especially because I was all about radical self-expression. Like, there was a lot of that, but there was also this mental intelligence that had gone dormant in me that I don't know. I was so curious to feel like learn what I'd learned from 14 years of being a professional athlete, because it felt like I'd learned absolutely nothing except for hedonism and the gratification of my massive ski ego, right? And so I just was desperate to quit. And so what transitioned me out, because here's the thing, I didn't feel comfortable quitting until there was a woman that came up that I felt was worthy of taking over. And every year there was somebody, like, ooh, she's threatening. Like, she's really good. Like, for sure, she's better than me. But then this woman would get crippled, like seriously, like never to ski again. Or this woman would not be willing to, like, would see it as selling her soul to be sponsored. And so she just wasn't given any opportunities. Or the next woman wasn't very interesting in the interviews or very pretty. And so she couldn't get sponsors. Like it was just, and just by opportunity alone, I kept getting better and better because I was given all these amazing trips, like heli skiing in Alaska. Like it takes money to do that. And if you're a great resort skier and you don't get to go heli skiing in Alaska, then you're never going to get to that next level, that you can't find that terrain at a ski resort. So anyway, I mean, it just went on and on, that I just kept waiting for this person to appear. And finally she did. And then I felt more comfortable walking away. And the person that appeared, though, was rescued in that helicopter that day with me. And so she went through that trauma too. And then the next year she broke her back and was paralyzed from the waist down for only a few days. She actually, I assume it took a couple of years, but she recovered. So she only was the best in the world for about a year. And then it was somebody else. But I felt like, okay, I think she's a better skier than me. I'm good. I'm out.
And did you go right into exploring fear and becoming an expert in that? Or like, obviously you were innately an expert, but like, did you already know you wanted to start exploring this idea of fear and really studying it? Or did you kind of let yourself go into flow for a little while and just figure it out? Like what happened post that?
Well, the word expert is funny because the second you declare you're an expert on somebody, everybody thinks you're a fool. And it's still a work in progress, but there's definitely, I don't think there's anybody on the planet that has really worked harder than me to figure out the puzzle that is fear and what to do about it. I don't think on the planet. And I've literally devoted my life to it. And I realized my entire ski career was just to figure this out. And because it's a life tested experience, and it gives me credibility so people will actually listen to me. Because obviously I was dealing with a tremendous amount of fear during my ski career. So I went to Burning Man in 2003 for the first time. And I had an experience of radical self-expression at Burning Man that I only ever get to feel when I'm skiing really aggressively, probably for the cameras. And I realized that I didn't need to risk my life in order to do that or feel the way that made me feel. And so I came home from Burning Man in 2003, and I'd had that experience in Chamonix, and that woman was now, considered the best in the world. But I was still sponsored. I had 12 sponsors. I didn't even have to ski anymore. I just had to show up at the parties and drink a can of Red Bull and I'd get paid. And I had my own TV show. I had 4 different monthly columns in 4 different ski magazines around the world. I could write for any publication I wanted. Powder Magazine was calling me the protoplasmic mass of the ski industry. Like I was the it girl. And like I said, I didn't even need to ski if I didn't want to. And I came back from Burning Man and I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I quit everything. Skier's Journal, which is a kind of trade publication, called me, they wrote a feature-length article about it called The Great Disappearing Act, where I was just on top. And I wrote a letter. It took me 20 minutes, quit with all my sponsors, quit the TV show, quit writing for the magazines, quit the columns. It's really hard to get a monthly column in a ski magazine. I had one in Australia, New Zealand, in Europe, in Canada, in the United States. Like I was everywhere. And I just quit everything. My boyfriend, my family freaked out. They're like, what are you doing? I'm like, no, I am done. I am so done. And I even stopped skiing and I slept for 10 years.
Like actually,
my adrenal system was so overloaded from being a fear addict for so long. And like I said, I did some things right by fear, and that's what made me so good. But I did some things wrong by fear, and I was just so burned out because 95% of my energy was also spent ignoring fear. And so I was just,
when your body gets trained biologically to like almost like fight, you're in fight or flight all the time from fear. And so, as you said, your adrenals get so shot because your body's just expecting it. You wake up and your body's preparing for war every day because that's what you've taught it to do.
Doesn't know the difference between war or getting chased by a tiger or fear for pleasure or any of that.
So Brandon Webb, who was on the podcast, ran sniper training for the SEALs. And he and I had an offline conversation that wasn't private, but he talked about, being shot at versus having a business struggling, and how the stress of having a business struggling was higher than having your life threatened by being shot at, and how the anxiety that it created and the fear that it created in terms of being an entrepreneur, because he's an entrepreneur too. And he's like, this was like this baffling thing he's talked to a few friends about, where it's really interesting how your body doesn't know the difference. If you're telling your body that it's, you're being threatened, the being threatened physically, being threatened emotionally, being threatened is being threatened, and your body responds very similarly chemically. And if you're threatened for 12 years, even self-induced threats, your body's just used to that. So I get the whole sleeping for 10 years.
Yes, and my interpretation of what you just described is that he knows how to handle fear, and I see this all the time with
Yeah.
clients. They know how to handle fear in one area of their lives, but they don't know
Yeah.
how to handle it in others.
Yep.
Or this is an interesting phenomenon. I had a client, she was a physician, a doctor in New York City, and she was famous. And so she was in a man's world and quote fearless in that world and a total badass. And she was an expert skier. But over the years, whenever she went skiing, her skiing just got worse and worse, and to the point where she could barely go down a groomed run anymore. So that's why she hired me. And what we realized is that she was blocking out fear in order to be so badass or quote fearless, which nobody's fearless, in her profession. And so it was showing up triply in other areas of her life. Like it was redirecting and keeping her awake at night, showing up as insomnia, like all this undealt with fear from her profession was now just making the rest of her life disintegrate.
That's fascinating, because I could see that. I even talk about it consciously, where it's like my work life is so volatile that I want my home life to be super stable. And it's not, maybe that's a different version of quote fear, but it's even the feeling of security versus insecurity, where it's like work is, running a business is insecure. And so you want to find security other places. Same thing where you want to find confidence, or the fear can seep out in other places and affect other parts. That's fascinating. And so how quickly did you dive, as you said, you didn't do this for 10 years. Like you obviously always had a relationship and a conscious side of it, but when did you actually start studying it, practicing, helping people with their fear, all those things? When did that really start to become an idea, and when did you execute on it?
Well, I said that I stopped skiing, and that's not entirely true. I still have always gone heli skiing for 2 weeks every year in Alaska because,
it's amazing.
Why wouldn't I?
Yeah.
But that's the skiing I like to do. I don't like to ski at ski resorts. So, and then I also started mindset only ski camps because I wanted to learn what I'd learned after a decade and a half of being a professional skier, which felt like nothing at that point. And so I hired a sports psychologist, and I also wanted to continue to get free gear. I mean,
touche. I get it.
And tickets and if I wanted to.
Yeah.
So I started these mindset only ski camps, and I hired a sports psychologist, and he had a PhD in sports psychology. He came in and he started teaching my camp that was well attended. And I realized this guy doesn't have anything to offer, that captures anything. And so I then met a Zen master, and I hired him for the next camp. And I wound up studying with him intently for 14 years. And I was obsessed with studying Zen. So while I was sleeping, and I really didn't do much else besides sleep and study Zen for all those years. He ran the mindset portion of my camp. And then, he learned a facilitation tool that helped people broker conversations in between themselves and different parts of them. And he wound up being put on the map as the most significant teacher of Zen wisdom in the Western world because of this dialogue he invented that is brilliant. And he was getting paid $50,000 a day to facilitate it. And I got priced out, but then he taught me how to facilitate it. And so what I started doing is not only facilitating my own camps, but I realized that through voice dialogue facilitation with my clients, the broken conversations between them and their fear pretty much solved every problem the client had in skiing or in life in general. And so pretty soon my clients started asking for me to be their therapist beyond the ski camp. Probably like 60% of my clients are like, we want more. So next thing you know, I became what I call a Zen therapist. And then pretty soon I realized, what's taught. So basically 15 years as a person that risks her life for a living. Like I learned a thing or two about what to do about fear. And I realized that what we're taught by doctors, psychologists, self-help gurus on what to do about fear is wrong. It's actually the exact opposite of what we should be doing. And because of what is being taught, it's the reason why there's such rampant anxiety disorders, depression, insomnia, anger issues, et cetera, and also underperforming, panic attacks, all those things. Like the predominant message on what people are taught about what to do about fear is causing all these problems for people.
And what is that message? What do you think is the wrong message?
Conquer and overcome it, let go of it, replace it with calming practices, rationalizing away, cognitive behavioral therapy. All the things that we do are so disrespectful to fear. And fear is retaliating. Fear is fighting back for, to borrow the words of the Beastie Boys, it's fighting for its right to party. And so the only version of fear that we know right now is the combative, retaliatory, like, how dare you deny me my rightful place in your life fear. So we continue to see it as being the problem without realizing that we're actually the problem because we've been fighting a war against this primary emotion for so long now. And
love that. And so a couple more questions for you. Number one, what's next? Where do you want to take this?
World domination. No. Well, I wrote a book called The Art of Fear, and I run ski camps called the Art of Fear ski camps, and for snowboarders too now. And I have facilitated tens of thousands of clients now, brokering conversations between them and their fear. And really, if you're looking in this podcast for the one thread amongst all successful people that rise to the top of the top in what they do, here's the thread. First of all, the willingness to feel fear, which means that they're willing to step out of their comfort zone where the fear exists. And when I say fear, I don't mean scared or afraid. They're not willing to be scared or afraid. They're just willing to feel uncomfortable. And then the second thing, even if you just have the slightest drop of intimacy with that fear, it's like, I'm Batman and fear's Robin, and we're stronger together than apart. And if you can have that intimacy and fear, all of a sudden, you don't even have to make it into a bonus in your life. It just turns automatically into the greatest part of your life that helps you be present, focused, awake, alive, bringing your A game. And so long as you have enough intimacy with that fear, you'll also, even if you're taking big risks in your life, still be able to sleep at night. So at some point I'll write a book, how to take risks and still sleep at night. But for now, what I'm really focused on, because I've been focused for a long time on helping athletes who are struggling with, they may feel fearless during their sport, but they have maybe insomnia or depression or anxiety, panic attack issues. I help athletes like that, or maybe they're underperforming. I've been doing that for a long time, but quite honestly, if given the choice between helping athletes perform better, which I can do and I love to do, or helping people who have crippling anxiety disorders solve them permanently so that they're gone instead of managing them for life, the choice for me is really obvious. So my next book is going to be directed towards the anxiety and anxiety disorder crisis that's just getting worse and worse in our culture. And my next book will explain exactly what causes anxiety and anxiety disorders, why what we're doing is working to manage it, but we'll never solve it, and what to do instead that will make it so that these issues become a just kind of weird, misguided time and thing of the past.
So last question, if you had to give one piece of advice to someone that wants to conquer their fears, not the word, but get intimate with fear. But honestly, the main question is someone that wants to achieve at a high level, that wants to pursue their dreams. What would be that one thing you figured out that you wish you heard, that you did hear, that you would share with someone that's trying to pursue it being a top performer in their field?
Your relationship with fear is the most important relationship of your life because it determines your personality. It determines your life choices. It determines whether you feel good or whether you're slowly starting to struggle more and more. I find that you can have a compromised relationship with fear for about 10 years tops before things start to go south. And so if you have a problem, any problem, it could be physical, mental, emotional, relationship, and on, your relationship with fear either has something or everything to do with it. And notice I didn't say fear has something to do with it. It's your relationship with fear. Because fear is not a problem. It's actually one of the most amazing experiences we get to have here on planet Earth. We only have problems with it if we have a compromised relationship with it. So get to know what your relationship is with it and then try to make it better.
Love it. Well, Kristen, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for coming on Hawke.